Parashat Vayeshev. And I'm just always mystified by the Parsha because the journey that you encounter every single year in the Parsha is basically your personal journey. If you're able to tune in and see those lights where it's really a personal journey. So today I'm going to give you an overview of the Parsha for those of us who did not have time to kind of glance through it. And then I'm going to give you 4 or 5 themes that the Parsha speaks about it and what are the lessons that we could take home with it. And you're going to see by the end of the Parsha how really everything is just beautifully perfect. So the name of the Parsha is Vayeshev, and it means, and he dwelt. Yaakov settled in Hebron with his 12 sons. You remember we're speaking about the whole journey of Yaakov. A few weeks ago, we spoke about him going to Haran, then him coming back from Haran, and now he's finally in the destination. And it seems like a very long journey. He has gone through a lot. So his favorite son is Yosef, who is only 17 years old at this time. And all the brothers are jealous because he has preferential treatment. And, here is a very common thing in every generation, favoritism. When you have children, favoritism. And the reality is that it's not so great to have favoritism. And we also understand here that when there is favoritism, it really has nothing to do with them actually having favoritism, because we're not talking about regular people, we're talking about tzaddikim and what they came to bring down. So even in this case that we might see favoritism, the reality is that it's a much deeper theme or a much deeper teaching for all of us. So how do we know he had favoritism? Because his father was treating him with preferential treatment. He had this multicolor coat, as we all know, and you could see it in kids' books, you could see it depicted in movies, right, in paintings. So we see that Yaakov has a thing for Yosef. And if we start thinking about it, why does he have something from, did we start? Why do we have, why does he has a preferential treatment with him? One of the reasons is because he was the son of his first wife, second wife, but first love, which is Rachel Imenu. And that is the reason why there's a lot of things that we have learned throughout the Parshiot that comes and teaches us this kind of dynamic that is happening in Yaakov's home between him and his wife, between the children, and how they see their father, etc., as we spoke last week about the idea of Reuben. So Yosef relates to his brothers that he has these 2 wonderful dreams. And we know that these dreams, basically what he's doing, he's foretelling that he is destined to rule over them. Now, last I checked, nobody wants to be told there's somebody, I'm a subordinate, I'm secondhand too. And this increases the envy and hatred towards him. Later in the parsha, we see that Shimon and Levi plot to kill him, but Reuven decides to let's not kill him, let's put him in the pit. And intending, what was his point? He says, later I'm going to come and take him out. That's what he's having in mind. And now while Yosef is in the pit, Judah has sold him. He comes, there is a caravan of Ishmaelites, and he sells them to them. And now when the brothers come back to get him, suddenly he's not there. So they need to devise a plan, like, well, what are we going to do now? What are we going to say to our father? So they take his special, beautiful coat, a multicolored coat, they dip it in goat's blood, and they show the father, and they say, we're so sorry. They lead him to believe that he has been devoured by a wild animal. So we see already many different themes going through this parsha. Later, we see that Judah gets married and he has 3 sons. The first one was Er. He dies young and childless, means he was married to Tamar, and because certain things that he did or didn't do, he dies young before she has a child. And there's this idea that when a male dies before he has children, in the olden days, he had to marry the wife will have to marry the next brother. So now they give Tamar's second brother, who is Onan. He's called a levirate marriage. Onan again seeds by spilling the seed, and he too passes away early on. Now,
Can I say something?
Sure.
Ruthie just sent me a text. Voices just opened his eyes right now. What happened?
Our brother, but we dedicated this sales and samples. Me.
then it's good they're all up here with you.
No, it's just like,
Hashem.
They just said we're learning in this be that.
thank you, Hashem. We have to say, Odula Hashem, Kitao Kino Elam Hasdo. There's only God. Okay, whew.
Wow, sorry.
No, it's such a big deal, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niya bidbaro. I guess this video is not gonna get shown. No, it's all good. It's all good. It's a lot of times I try to relate to the class, like the things that I experience of my life. That it's not my life; it's all of our lives if we're tuned in. That a lot of times you really see Hashem in ways that you can't believe your eyes. And sometimes we speak things for this huge miracle that we just experienced. And I think we forget that Hashem is also in the small miracles of our lives. So it's just really powerful for us to experience all this together. So I'm kind of glad that it's on video. So it's like, a lot of times you say stories over the years and you're like, no, that can be, right? Like, that didn't happen, right? And here we see live that it happened. So thank you so much. Okay, rerouting. It's all good. It's all meant to be.
I just got excited.
Of course, well, me too. Okay, so Onan, who is the second brother now, he marries Tamar and he does the same thing. What does he do? Instead of impregnating his wife, he loved his wife. He loved the way she looked, and he decided to spill the seed, and therefore she does not get pregnant. And again, he passes away. Now, when Judah sees this, he's reluctant. He's like, there's no way I'm giving my third son. I mean, come on, there must be something wrong with this girl. So he says, no, sorry, he's too young. He's still very young. He shouldn't get married. And we see from here that Tamar is determined to have the lineage of her first husband. She realizes that there is a purpose. And she goes and she dresses, disguises herself. She goes to the mikveh. A lot of times we don't understand the deeper concepts, but she prepares her stuff. What does that mean? She immerses in the mikveh. She's teora. She dresses like a prostitute and she seduces Judah himself. And later on, a few months later, Judah hears, guess what? Your daughter-in-law is actually pregnant. So what does he say? He says, if she's pregnant, it can make sense. It doesn't make sense. And he says she needs to be executed for harlotry. But then Tamar says, and she produces certain things, the ring, right, different things that he had given her at the time as a way of payment. And he publicly admits that he is the father of Tamar's child, and she gives birth to two twin boys. One is Peretz. Anybody knows who Peretz is? Peretz is the ancestor of King David, is the lineage of David the Melech. And Zerah. Now, this is a second theme or third theme in the Parsha. And from there we go into the idea that Yosef is taken to Egypt and sold up to Potiphar. And the minister is charged, and the minister is charged of Pharaoh's slaughterhouse. And God blesses everything he does as soon as he is made overseer of all the master's property. And he goes through this incredible journey. And if you are from the 70s or 80s and you remember that movie, right? I think it's going to be always ingrained in my head, this movie that we saw growing up, the story of the Jewish people. It was called in Spanish. I don't know. It's probably some Hollywood something. And they always used to have it for Passover time, Easter week. They used to have it in South America. It's Jewish. Yeah, you think it's Jewish. Then you read the Torah, you see it's not so Jewish, the way they depict it in the movie. But anyhow, we see that he becomes the viceroy of Egypt, and God blesses everything that he does. And we have a very interesting thing that happens, that Potiphar's wife desires this handsome, charismatic boy. And if you remember, Yosef was always beautiful himself, looking in the mirror, checking himself out. And she's very attracted to him and she wants to take him, be with him. And Yosef rejects her advances. And it's interesting because I was thinking about it, that this is the beginning of blame shift, right? Why so? Because it was her, the one who was after him. And what did she say? She comes and she says to her husband, this Hebrew slave tried to force himself on me. He needs to be thrown into the prison. So the whole parsha, you're looking at this story and like, what is going on? Nothing makes sense. All these different storylines. And Yosef then gains the trust and admiration of all his fellow jailers, inmates, and he appoint him to be in a position of authority in the prison's administration. Now, in prison, again, Yosef has something else. He already had the dreams with his brothers that got him in trouble to begin with, how he ended up in Egypt. But now that he's in the jail, again, the story with the dreams. And now the dreams are not his own, but it's actually Pharaoh's chief butler and baker that were thrown into prison. They were both incarcerated for offering their royal master, for offending the royal master, and they both have these disturbing dreams. And Joseph interprets these dreams. In 3 days, he tells them the butler will be released and the baker will be hanged. And Joseph asks the butler to intercede on his behalf with Pharaoh. And it's interesting because Joseph's predictions are fulfilled, but only until the point that one is hanged and one is liberated. But the butler completely forgets about him. And here is poor Joseph again in the jail waiting. Nothing happens for him. So I just gave you, instead of going straight into the different themes in the Parsha, for those of us who did not read it, I'm giving you a little bit kind of the overview. Now, having given you this very long, 5-minute overview, 11-minute overview, I like to say that this is just the cherry on top. I'm only giving you a glimpse on the real story of the Parsha. So dig deeper. This is an amazing, amazing Parsha. And I'm going to have to print something that says this is an amazing Parsha and where that everyone said. But, oh well. Okay, so ready to dig deeper a little? Okay, great. So Vayeshev, the different themes that we're going to be learning, I'm going to tell you what the theme is, and then we're going to develop the idea. So when life finally feels settled, Parashat Vayeshev opens with a deeply peaceful moment. Think about the journey that we have been going. We literally have been walking with Yaakov the last few weeks, right? Imagine all the things that he did. Last week he was wrestling the angel, and he got hurt. And here we are. He finally made it home. So Vayeshev, Yaakov, and Yaakov settled after decades of running, fighting, building, and surviving. And Yaakov finally returns home to Hebron with stability, wealth, honor, and family aligned with his spiritual mission. Because if we know something that about Yaakov, one of the biggest successes he had, it wasn't that he became a millionaire. It wasn't only that he fought with the angel, but it was that his children stayed true to the purpose of life, to the mission that he had set out to do. And this is huge because it's not simple to give over to somebody your beliefs, and in our simple, humble ways, if you are a doctor or you're a lawyer or you are, engineer, you have this idea of ballerina, you have this in the back of your head, they say, yeah, I want my child to do the same, right? Like, oh, I wish my son, family reason. But the reality is that it's not the physical things that we stand for, but it's who they become. When your child behaves like a mensch, you did it. Doesn't matter his status, doesn't social, all that is secondary. But when a person stays true to what you labor to give over, that is a big deal. That is the biggest richness that a person could have. And also for ourselves, can I measure up to the mission that Hashem has for me? And it's not so simple to measure up all the time. It's easy when you get challenged to kind of, okay, God, you didn't want it, right? So that's one thing that I think is very important for us to highlight, that they were all completely aligned what was the mission of the Jewish people. Now, this episode describes a scene of almost idyllic, a moment of serenity when Yaakov truly longs for the tranquility he feels he has earned. And a lot of times, we go through life. I go all the time through it. I'm like, okay, Rafa, maybe one day we move to Florida, You envision this like sipping margaritas by the water and like, I don't know exactly what we have in mind, right? But in the back of your mind, I think everybody works hard a whole life to come to this place of kind of, I have arrived, destination, enjoy, chill. And the reality is that the Parsha teaches us really what the purpose of life is, which is not to go sip the margaritas when you're 75 like over. That's not what life is all about. If anything, it's interesting because there's this concept that a person should never retire. What does that mean? So you're going to be 105 and still working. That's not what it means. It means that when your professional life ends, that's okay. It could end, whatever you decide, 60. If you want to retire at 30, go for it. Why not? But you need to be involved in giving and doing something for the rest of your life. And when you think about psychologists and biologists and doctors, they always look at people who just stay home all the time without being a part of that sequence of giving and receiving, and giving and receiving creates a difference on the person that's staying home. But when a person is constantly doing something, you could volunteer, you could work for free, you could take a second job, it doesn't matter, but continue to work. Because life, as long as you're breathing, there is a purpose. Hashem will not give you an extra day or hour if there was not something for you to be done during that time. So we need to harness the power of our time on earth and really max it out, like they say. Okay, so this episode describes the cynic of us almost idealistic, a moment of serenity when Yaakov truly longs for the tranquility he feels he has earned. His request is pure. He wants a calm so he can serve Hashem with full focus. Now, many of us know this feeling intimately. Hashem, if life could just quiet down, I could finally grow the way I'm meant to be. If I had all the money in the world, I could finally open the grand da-da-da. If I was, right? If I had ABC, therefore I could do. And that's the reality is that that's not the way that we think. But in this moment of calm, a storm is already brewing beneath the surface. How do we know? The tranquility that seems so reachable begins to unravel, and the parsha quickly shifts from serenity to one of deepest family crisis in the Torah. We're going to see all the family crises. So if you think that your family has issues, just read the Torah, because you're going to see a really wealth of interpersonal relationships, and you're also going to see how a person should behave when you're in the midst of these difficulties per se. So now we're going to the different theme that the Parsha is bringing on. So which are the different themes? And I just wanted to make sure you have copies, you have everything you need? Yeah? Okay. So the illusion of tranquility and the test with not logic. And I love every bit of what I was writing this week. The Rebbe explains that Yaakov's desire for peace was not escapism. It wasn't like, okay, moving to Florida. It was that it was a spiritual yearning for the kind of clarity we associate with the days of Mashiach. What was he yearning for? He was yearning for that calmness that you're going to have when Mashiach comes. He said, I don't want to be bothered anymore with the hustle and bustle. Let me just enjoy. But it wasn't only enjoyment personally, it was purposeful. Hashem even grants him 9 full years of relative calm. But the calm is not his destination. It's actually a preparation. This little time that Hashem gives him, 9 years, it was preparing him for the next stage. It's like when you slow down for a minute in order to race even further, right? And it happens in everything that you do. You know, I remember we always used to drive to Florida with 4 kids in the car. But we did it. We enjoyed it. We actually did have probably most of the most amazing memories with our kids in this drive to Florida, which I don't know if I should be proud of, no, but we used to do in 21 hours door to door. We had a technique because we did it many years. And we will pack the car and the kids in the car with their pajamas, showered and everything ready. 7 p.m. on a Motzei Shabbos in the winter. My husband will drive from 7 till 4 in the morning. 4 in the morning we switch. He sleeps. I drive to 9 or 10 until the kids wake up, pull over in a gas station, take an hour or two to relax and jump, maybe do sightseeing in our city if we're in a cool place. And the kids back in the car. 4 p.m. we'll be driving into my mother-in-law's driveway. But if we didn't have that hour, we couldn't continue driving. It was impossible. So that slowdown is only a time to bring you even to a place you didn't even know you could go. And this is basically what's happening here. He's saying that Hashem grants him these 9 years of relative calm, but the calm is not a destination, but it's a preparation. How so? Yaakov now faces a new kind of test, one unlike all his previous confrontations with Esav, Lavan, and Shechem. We already saw he had all these trials and tribulations. This new trial is completely different than those. How so? Those earlier challenges were battles with identifiable forces of negativity, where Yaakov could see what's the evil and resist it. But the loss of Yosef is a different test entirely. It's one that is marked by confusion, silence, uncertainty, and the suffering that makes no logical sense whatsoever. And many times when you read the parsha, just even plainly, you're like, really? This now, after everything he endured? So Rebbe calls this a higher, deeper test, because the soul cannot lean on understanding or accomplishment, but a person needs to rely only solely on his faith. It's not like, okay, I went through this trial, so I gained this. Sometimes there is no why. There's no reason behind. And that's where the faith has to kick in. So through this painful refinement, Hashem begins preparing Yaakov for a far more elevated tranquility, one that he reaches only at the end of his life in Vayeshev. So to summarize Yaakov's two types of tests, which I think is going to give us also personally something for ourselves. The first type of test that we have in life is the test of obstacles, when somebody's in the middle of what you're supposed to accomplish. These are the tests that he had with Esau, Laban, and Shechem. This involved fighting evil, resisting negativity, and choosing truth. You have to stay steadfast to what you believe and kind of power through. They are difficult, but they're clear. You know what the battle is. I have to overcome myself. I have to overcome my Yetzer Hara. I have to overcome those dark parts of myself. Salud. You know what to do, and you know why it matters, right? In order to be safe, I need to run away from Mesa. The second type of tests are the tests of confusion. And these tests are the tests that have no reason. These have no meaning. This is when you see something so difficult that you're like, right? We see the Holocaust, we see October 7, we see children suffering, whatever we see, it's unbearable. Like, how? This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I think more and more, it's interesting that Hashem has brought us all unanimously worldwide to that place. Like, this does not make any sense. Nobody could fathom the idea of October 7. I remember people coming to Sholi with Yontov and telling us, they were like, what are you talking about? This is actually not possible. There's no way. And yet, he was. And hi, welcome. So the test where nothing aligns, and the suffering literally feels pointless. It didn't make sense. This is the test of waiting. It's the test of silence. It's not so easy to be silent when you're in pain. It's the test of ambiguity. It's the test of loss, of feeling unseen and unheard and feeling abandoned. So this test that the Rebbe explains refines the soul on a much deeper level, because you cannot lean on understanding. You can only lean on Hashem. This is what Yaakov faces with Yosef. This was not a punishment for Yaakov, but it was actually an elevation for Yaakov. This was Hashem's preparing him for a deeper light. Just like we see in our lives, the moment that actually you feel it's breaking you down is usually often the place that you find yourself, the place that actually births us. And it's very interesting, because I could tell you many different instances, and I am sure that if I were to ask each girl in this class, did you ever have that moment where you felt like, okay, Hashem, yeah, can you take over? Because like, I really don't know what to do. And then when you stay strong and you keep praying and you keep working on yourself, before you know it, you're on the other side of it. And I could probably write a book on different moments in my life when I saw like, I really can't, no way I can do this. It's not you. It's only you, Hashem. It's only you. And I think that although we, Baruch Hashem, don't get tested like that all the time, we are quick to forget those moments and take all the things for granted when we're complaining again. How about this? How about that? How about that? Right? I had, recently I mentioned to you a few months ago, I had a literally mabul in my house. Like, I have never seen so much water coming through ceiling in my life. And like 5 different, like, I was just, you know what to do with it, right? So I'm still looking at that ceiling because they haven't changed that part. They have to first finish the leak, so I have to wait, and it doesn't look pretty, you know, girls. And sometimes it really gets to me. It really, really gets to me. I'm like, come on, how many months? And then all I have to do is remind myself that moment when I couldn't breathe on my own, right? After when I was sick in the hospital and I was hooked up to every possible machine. And I'm like, okay, Hashem. I love the ceiling. It looks amazing. Art Deco, right? Is holding those different truths or parts of yourself and saying, it's okay. Hashem figured that out. Hashem could figure this out. It's that moment of a higher self or higher faith. So this teaches us that the disruptions we experience are often not obstacles, but they are gateways to a deeper kind of a spiritual truth. It's Hashem is literally, it's like you're resisting yourself and Hashem is just pulling you up, forcing you to go to a different part of yourself because of it. So the second theme in this parsha is Yosef, the light hidden in the descent. Yosef enters the parsha, we just said, 17 years old. And he's filled with dreams and potential. Just think about a 17-year-old. And Yaakov sees him in the spiritual qualities necessary to overcome the metaphysical powers of Esav. Not only about physical Esav, but all the power of Esav, negative power of Esav. How does he see so in his son? He sees that he has purity. He has tremendous inner strength, right? He did not fall to Potiphar's wife. He had absolute self-control and the ability to remain spiritually elevated even in spiritually dark environments. Hashem put him in the darkest of darkest, and he stood strong. And it only reminds me, our beautiful Chayalim. They are in the darkest of the dark, and here we are, we're standing.
You're only 18 years old.
And they only, he was 17, they're only 18. And I just want to say that although our hostages are everyone but one back home, one body was still waiting, I think that this time we need to pray so much for our Hayalim, even more than they were in Gaza. Because when they were in Gaza, they were engaged on the war. So they couldn't think. They were just where they go. Now, a lot of them are left to their own devices, their own thoughts. And we know that unfortunately we have lost a lot of Hayalim to suicide. So this is the time when you really need to pray for them. Do not underestimate the power of your prayers. If your prayers, because it's all of our prayers collectively, got them into Gaza and got them out of Gaza, they're facing a different Gaza. They're facing Esav within themselves. So I think that it's really important for us not to forget the mission that we have, that the war might be somewhat over, but the war is really not over. It's just the beginning. So we need to understand that the parsha is really speaking about us today now. Yaakov understood who his son was, and he was thinking about him 24/7, basically. So, but his brothers see something very different. They saw immaturity because he was arrogant and he liked the beauty and stuff, and behavior reminiscent to Esav's ego. Their misunderstood the leads. Their misjudgment leads to Yosef being thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and sent into chains of events that seems like a complete downfall. Yet every step downward is actually a step upward. And I'm going to show you how. It explains that Yosef quote, a beautiful quote, the Ketone Pasim. It is a clue. Its name is hinting to the exact trials he faced. Potiphar, the merchants, the Midianites, and Ishmaelites, signaling that Hashem equips him with spiritual protection before the challenge even begins. How so? This is so beautiful and so perfect. Yosef's coat is a symbol of future trials that we all encounter. The coat had many colors, and it was called Ketonet Pasim. It's not just a garment, but it's a spiritual map. Rashi teaches us that the word Pasim is an acronym for the very ordeals that Joseph will endure. And I actually copy from the Chumash. Pasim is Potiphar's wife, Sochrim, the merchants, the Ishmaelites, and the Midianites. The 4 letters stands to the 4 trials that he endured. So basically what this is teaching us, that the coat is Hashem's way of saying, I am clothing you, I'm protecting you for every single trial that is up and coming. Just on the name of the coat. It's already, he was embodied, he was guarded. He had like a fence around him that was protecting him for the 4 trials that were up to come. And I'm giving you the tools before the test appears. And it's interesting because I have said in the past this idea of nisayon. When a person has a nisayon basically is a trial. And within the word nisayon is the word nes, which is miracle. So even when you're facing something that is very, very difficult, you have to know that Hashem is hiding within it. The answer is always given before the problem. And the practical joke is that if you take the Talmud, the Talmud has a specific order. The book of Gittin, of divorce, the laws of divorce are given before the laws of marriage, right? For those who like a joke. So means that the solution to something that might not work is given to you even prior the thing that could be a problem to your life. And we learned this exactly from the coat that he was wearing. So this teaches us that Hashem equipped us long before we know we will need it. Nothing in your life, in our lives, is accidental. Every struggle is shaped for you and by you. Every sensitivity you develop becomes your superpower. When you are very emotional, you're not emotional just because you won't be emotional. You're emotional because maybe Hashem is giving you the sensitivity to feel somebody else's pain and help somebody else. Everything that Hashem has given you, the makeup of who you are, is exactly the tools that you have in order to bring light into this world. Salud. Every coach you receive was a preparation. So Yosef becomes a model for how to live as a Jew in exile. Joseph's descent, going down, is actually his ascent. Joseph's trajectory is a paradox. He's thrown into the pit, but then he rises in Potiphar's house. He's accused unjustly, and he's raised in prison. He's forgotten by the butler, and he's like, okay, when you really, if you were to watch the movie and you're at that stage, you're like, okay, that's it, it's the end of him. He rises to interpret dreams for Pharaoh, just because of the butler. So the sequence of things that happen, every yerida was for an aliyah. It means every time he was going down, it was only a prep time in order to go up. So every fall is a disguised step upward. Yosef is in the energy of I will not become the environment, but the environment will become elevated because I am here. This is why he prevails where others break. And it's funny, I was listening yesterday a podcast, I'm always listening to something positive. And I was listening to a podcast on productivity. And this person was saying that it's not so much that you make your goals for 2026 and you really map it out. In January, I'm going to do this, and February. And then you actually break it down per week. And then you break it down it's actually if you show up. Consistency. You could make the most beautiful plan and plaster on your wall. But if you don't take the actions every day, it's not going to help. If you don't hit the gym and lift the 5-pounder every single day for 400 times, you're not going to have the muscle. So it's the constant, continuously working in yourself. So he was rising in Potiphar's house. He was rising in prison. He was rising with Pharaoh. He transformed every environment he enters, teaching us to remain ourselves in places that challenges who we are. And we all have this place where we've been challenged, whether it's in our mind, whether it's in our family connections, friend connections, at work, in our shul, whatever you may be. And we need to stay true and really to keep out your eye on the ball. Like, what is my purpose here? Why is Hashem doing this yerida? Why is Hashem doing this side tour? Why am I fired from this job? Why did I fight with my friend? Why did I have to? All those different things. It's not a test. And I'm going to repeat what at one point I said last week. It's not a test to you, but it's a test for you. It's a test for you to go within and really harness the power that is latent, is waiting to say, come out. Okay, the next theme is very interesting, is the whole story with Judah and Tamar. And again, we're only touching in each of them some ideas that we could take home, where redemption begins. This story with Tamar and Judah is where the redemption begins. At the height of Joseph's narrative, the Torah takes a big pause and suddenly makes kind of a detour to the story of Judah's descent and his encounter with Tamar. This whole story in the middle, like, what does that have to do with anything? This interruption is actually intentional because we know that in the Torah, not even a dot is not put in place for a reason. And we also learn that sometimes you read a parsha and then you read the following parsha and they're kind of repeating the same. Or sometimes you have a few books of the Torah and then there's a book that is kind of seeing everything again. So like why you need to say it. When it's said again, it's because there's an importance to it. When something is repeated in the Torah, it means it's a highlight, right? It means there's a lesson to be learned. So this is not a side plot. This is actually the seed of Mashiach. It explains that Judah stepping forward to sell Yosef, because you remember earlier we said, who is the one who went there and took him and sold him? It was exactly Judah. Now, Judah stepping forward to sell Yosef instead of killing him is the moment that begins the redemption. It transforms an ending into actually a beginning. His actions preserve the possibility of reconciliation even through the decision is imperfect. Sometimes we're going to make a mistake, but yet there's something good that could come from it. When Tamar acting with quiet righteousness ensures the continuity of Judah's line, and when she reveals the pledges that he left her as a way of payment, Judah has the courage to publicly declare, she is more righteous than I am. An extraordinary moment of humility and truth. So here also personally, one thing that we could take home is that, it says that every pencil comes with the eraser on top. Why? Because you're bound to make a mistake. And you making your mistake is basically is the way life has to be. But you not remain on the mistake. You have the eraser to erase it right away. It means that when you make a mistake in your life, you turn on the light on Shabbat, you scream at somebody, hopefully not. You did something that was beneath of the person you want to become. There's no reason for you to beat yourself down. We have to do the same thing that Judah did. Say, hey, mistake, it's me, my bad, I did wrong. Okay? So from this union comes Peretz. Who is Peretz? Is the ancestor of King David and ultimately Mashiach. And it's emphasized here that the redemption begins not in moments of perfection, but in moments of courage, honesty, vulnerability, and the willingness to repair what's broken. It is when you actually own up. Because think about it. If you fight with someone and the person just moves on and says hello to you the next day as if nothing happened, are you going to be good? No, it's not going to work. The person has to say, hey, I'm so sorry. I actually hurt you. And I mean it, not even like to say it. It means that downfall actually could bring you even closer. It's a beautiful analogy that if you have a rope and the rope, let's say, is this long, and the two ends are, let's say, 10 inches away from each other. And then there's a break. Now you have to make a knot because you cut the rope. When you make the knot, yes, there's this little bump on the road, but the two ends are actually closer. So a disconnection comes in life to bring you to a closer, more intimate connection. That is the reason Hashem gave you a mouth. Let's sort it through. Let's figure it out. This idea of silencing someone just to keep them very quiet on the side, it's not bringing the two ends closer together. It's only pushing it further away. And we're learning this from the Parsha. So Judah's story shows us that even our failures can become the soil where redemption grows. The fourth thing is beautiful, is Ashkaha Pratit. Hashem's behind every hidden turn. Throughout this Parsha, nothing is what it seems, right? We look to the Parsha and it's like, what's going on? Yosef's cell looks like a tragedy. Oh my God, the brothers. I remember like growing up and hearing this term, like, that's horrible, right? Like nowadays we have become so not sensitized to human suffering that we didn't even think about selling your brothers like a horrible thing. But I remember being traumatized by this line. But it's the beginning of his rise. And it's interesting because I read somewhere, and I could ask my husband, maybe he said it in the class, that Yaakov wasn't really even upset with his siblings. If my siblings told me, trust me, I'll be really mad. Why wasn't he mad? Because he understood that I have to go on that journey, not because my siblings hate me or are jealous, but because I'm going in that journey, because ultimately the Jewish people need to come. So he understood what the agenda was. He understood what the job was. So he was like, so who are they?
Do we know that he understood that?
It's brought down. There's explanations. I'm happy to ask my husband because I remember he gave a class on that. Do you remember, Leah, when he gave the class about it? No. Otherwise, I'll ask. By the way, by the end of the class, I like to share the answers to the questions I asked my husband, and I have the answers to the questions. Pretty much think I do. So Joseph's cells looks like a tragedy, but it's the beginning of the rise. The brothers, they think they're punishing Yosef because they don't like him. But the reality is they were not punishing him. They were just the tool that Hashem used to get Yosef to where he needed to get. It's kind of very humbling. It's just a tool in Hashem's hands, right? Like, They think they're doing for them. So think about the people in your life who are making you crazy. They think they're doing something to you. Let me give you a little bit light that they're not. They're powerless in scheme of Hashem's plan for you, for what you personally need to go through. So Yosef thinks that the butler will free him, but the butler actually forgets him. That forgetfulness is the mechanism through which Joseph will ultimately stand before Pharaoh. So Yaakov thinks that Joseph is dead, but not true. While Joseph is very much alive, thriving, and moving towards his mission. And that's the reason why he was not consoled. He says that inside he felt that he couldn't be, that he was dead, Yaakov from his son. Judah thinks that he failed his family through this whole storyline. Yet through him, the seed of Mashiach is pure. The final redemption is being born through his actions. And Tamar looks like she's acting in shame because she's hiding, she's dressed in a certain way, she provokes him, etc. But her wisdom makes her fulfill her mission as she becomes the mother of royal lineage. So every turn, there was a reason for it. That was not the reason that the people who were going through it were actually experiencing. There was a whole completely answer to the plot of this parsha. I learned that every thread is a part of the tapestry. You know, a lot of times, I don't know if anybody here likes fabrics. I love fabrics, and the more intricate and complicated, the nicer. But if you have a beautiful tapestry, if you have a nice, I like, what's the name of this fabric? It's not called tapestry. It's called,
Card.
it's like a jacquard, like,
Card.
yeah, it has a certain texture. If you look at the French and the British fabrics, like for the royalty, you see the capes, they're like intricate if you go to museums, and then you turn this piece of cloth to the other side and it's an actual mess. Threads going this way and that way, tied together like a balagan. And that's basically what life is, right? We don't understand what is that higher, bigger mission. We're caught up on the knot behind to understand life. So, there's something beautiful here that the Rebbe stresses, a key lesson, that even when divine providence is hidden, it is still absolutely orchestrating every detail. So we often say, Hashem, how can this be good? I don't see the plan. This is painful. It hurts. I can't bear this anymore. By Vayeshev is actually answering, you don't see the plan because you are inside of it. That's the reason why you don't see it. And that's the reason why in Pirkei Avot that we read in the summer, it says, Aselecha Rav, make yourself a rabbi, and buy yourself a friend. And I'm not going to get into why it says buy. There's a beautiful explanation, but why do you need to have people outside of you? Because if you're left to your own devices, your mind could take you to very interesting dark places. But when you have somebody who's on the outside and could point out, hey, that's not so. How about this other side? All of a sudden, your life completely changes. And it's funny because it does happen with me, and I have a very good friend, and I have Hashem, many good friends. And I also happens a lot of times with my husband. Sometimes it happens with my kids, where there's a huge challenge, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, hey, Dios mío, I don't know where to run. And my husband said, hey, but that's just like, it's like has no value. Like, it's not gonna happen. And like, really? You say, no, it's not gonna happen. And I go on my day and I make the best day because I had a support system, a friend who was able to see it not from the end with the little knot in the back of the fabric, but it was able to see the top of the fabric. It was able to see what is the purpose, what is the mission. Don't get tangled on the balagan. Yes, Sarah.
Okay.
Huh?
Okay.
Brocade. Thank you, Hashem. How could I forget that? If my fashion design teacher will hear me, thank you, Sarah. She will say, you failed, Rachel, your fashion design class. Come on, brocade is my favorite fabric. One day, girls, remind me, I have to bring down, I made a gorgeous brocade and fur coat that I still wear until today through my years in college. And I still wear it. It's really pretty because it's so intricate. So, and I think that's actually what life is all about. I think that if life was just simple, everything the same, it's like, I don't know how many people do it here, but like if you eat the same thing for breakfast every day and lunch and dinner every single day, after a week, you're like done. But if your whole life was that, there would be no excitement. You need to have flavor, you need to have color. So all these different challenges are making you, forcing you into change. Otherwise, you'll be status quo for the rest of your life. And then you wake up at age 200 and you're like, what did I just do? 200 years, exactly the same. I was the same person when the day I was born that the person I left planet Earth. There was no improvement. Status quo. I don't think that takes you anywhere too far. But Vayeshev answers, you don't see the plan because you're inside of it. Huh?
He said, I know people aren't that.
I know, we all do.
Buying at the same conversation,
Yes.
exactly the same topics, same conversation, which is comforting.
You know why? Because we all resist change. And you could see it in many ways. One way, and I think I mentioned it one time, that with GPS, if you always take one way and the GPS takes a different way, you're like hyperventilating. I don't know this street. I never saw the building. You're like completely, right? Or if you have to travel and you have to pack like 5 things, you're also like, right? When something is outside the normal, it's challenging. And I'm going to quote again my rabbi who says transition is anytime you're going through a transition in life, you're going to, what's the word that he uses, Rabbi Nivin? Every transition, you're going to underperform because we like status quo. Why? Because we feel safe. There's no safety in status quo. It's actually not safe because you're not moving forward. If you're not moving forward, you're actually falling back. You're not staying stationary. For those of us who think the stationary, it's the biggest lie. It's not true. If you're not growing, you're falling back. And think about a plant, right? Or vegetables or anything, right? Think about a plant. A plant, the moment that stops growing, is not staying plateau, gorgeous, beautiful, or you get flowers for Shabbat, put them on the table, wait 3 days. They're not status quo. They look very different than Friday. I just saw them this morning. I was like, okay, that I gotta go. I could save those 3. Okay. Right? So there's no such a thing as plateau. This is not a Jewish concept, plateau. What do you mean, plateau? And this is exactly, huh?
It's not the human condition.
It's not a human condition.
Yeah, you can't walk, and then you can crawl, and then you can run, and you can,
And then you gotta keep running. So when you're 100 years old, you could still run. But
whatever, but you never stay still.
you never stay still.
Never stay still, unfortunately.
Yeah, but are we staying still right here? That's a big one because I think people go to that comfort place where I feel, okay, fine. All right, I have this social starter and this money and this and this and this. Yeah. I arrive, I achieve. I'm there. You're far from there. That's just the beginning. So Hashem, how could this be good? I don't see the plan. Vayeshev answers, you don't see the plan because you are in it. That's where we left off. But the redemption has already begun. Hashem is orchestrating every detail, even when events appear chaotic and contradictory. This teaches us one of the most powerful truths of Jewish life. Divine providence is always active. You might be sleeping, but divine providence is 24/7. But we usually recognize it only in hindsight. Oh, wow, that happened because. We often tell Hashem, this makes absolutely no sense. And Hashem responds, give it time. Redemption has already begun. The fifth theme, and then after that I'm going to wrap up, is Yaakov's sorrow and the refinements of the soul. Yaakov experienced grief that is almost unbearable. Right? Nobody should hear of such a horrible idea. He refuses to be comforted. Why? Because Yosef wasn't dead. The Neshama refuses comfort when the beloved is still alive. But the deeper message is this, that Hashem does not send meaningless suffering. He sends hidden elevation. And I want you to hear that again. He does not send you meaningless suffering. He sends you hidden elevation. Every moment when you feel, namas, I can't, it's really, if you really hold on tight, say an extra tailing, actually say it a minute, cry with tears, give tzedakah, push. Because when you have a dam, you don't need, it's just one push until it breaks and all the water flows. So that thing that is holding your mazalo, is holding your next level in your life, that you feel, Dios mío, I can't handle it. All you have to do is one tiny more push. It doesn't need a lot. It just needs that one extra. Once it has got to the limit, it's just that one extra that makes the breakthrough. So there's an explanation that Yaakov's pains prepares him for the deeper spiritual tranquility and that he could not have achieved through comfort. In other words, the hardest chapters produce the deepest light of you. And it does. It does. The hardest moments are very hard, and sometimes you're really like, you're looking and you're like, Hashem, I don't know where to hold on to. And it is exactly then where the deepest light and the deepest part of you actually gets developed. So not because of what we do, but because who we become on the journey. That experience is going to bring you to a different level. What is the practical applications? And then we'll go back to the answer for last week's questions. B'ezrat Hashem, when life feels almost calm, we need to be aware. It means that you're stepping into higher mission. When things are all nice and perfect, you remember I told you last week that the idea of an egg, life is like an egg. When you're on the top, you shouldn't be too comfortable because it means you're already on your way down. And when you're really at rock bottom, don't despair, because if you're really at the rock bottom, it means you're already on that little wedge going back up. When you experience tests with no explanation, remember Yaakov. This is the gateway to your higher spiritual level. When everything feels like a fall, channel Yosef. Stay dignified, stay focused. Your rise is already planted inside your descent. It means you're already on the way up. When you make a mistake, like Judah, remember Judah, Teshuvah is not the end. It's actually the seed and the beginning of the Mashiach energy. Your personal redemption is coming because that mistake that you made. When the story makes no sense, I love this one. Trust the author. The redemption has already started. You just haven't reached the end of the chapter. So I could tell you personally that a lot of times it's so much easier to despair, to pack and go. And it is in the staying, it's in the continue to even grasp that tiny light that shines through all these challenges that you really arrive to the final destination. So when you're in the middle, you don't know what's going on, but it's coming. So in closing, the Parsha of hidden redemption, Vayeshev begins with serenity and ends with darkness. Right? You think that he's coming, he's going to be relaxed, that's it, I went home. And yet he's about to enter the craziest time of his life, the most challenging, the most heart-wrenching, the most test. If you thought until now he had a test, it was just the beginning. This was just the preamble to what was coming. But hidden inside the darkness is the birth of Perez, which is the seed of Mashiach. Is Joseph rise so he could be there when the Jewish people went down to Egypt. Is the roots of the exile. Is the seeds of redemption in the midst of all this. And the tools of the Jewish people we need for the next 1,000 years were given to us during this Parsha. So this Parsha is not about suffering, but it's actually about transformation. And it teaches us that redemption always begins long before we see it. Sometimes the place we fear the most is the place where Hashem has planted our greatest light.